Welcome to DABCC Radio,
where smart people listen.
Virtualization and Cloud Talk,
Featuring cutting-edge solutions from the hottest companies around the globe.
broadcasting from the DABCC offices in sunny Sarasota, Florida.
Surrounded by computers, books, and Legos.
A Microsoft MVP, Citrix Charter CTP, VMware vExpert.
And your host, Douglas Brown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DABCC Radio. As always, we have a fabulous show, and we have a Citrix Ready episode today. And thanks in cooperation with Citrix Ready, we have brought on Dell. And we're going to talk about some amazing stuff Dell's doing around automating the installation of XenDesktop, performance for power users a little bit, some of their bigger systems. But these appliances that these guys are making that'll really help you guys get up and running really fast, really easy, really powerfully and correctly. So this is great technology, great stuff. And I was really, really interested and excited about bringing these guys on the show and sharing it with you. So on that note, with no further ado, let's dive into my interview. I have three guys on. I have Sagnik from Citrix Ready. I have a gentleman named Tony from Citrix and Dan from Dell. And we'll get to it and let these guys introduce themselves, and you'll learn a little bit more about them and, of course, the technology. So with no further ado, here's my interview with Dell, Citrix, and Citrix Ready. Okay, guys, thank you so much for putting up with me during the pre-show, setting things up, and then also for being here today. I really look forward to this. This is we're going to talk about some neat technology that I'm very intrigued by and looking forward to learning more myself, and of course sharing that with our listeners. So thanks everyone for being here. There's a few of you, so let's just go around the horn and introduce everyone. So let's start with Sagnik. What do you do over at Citrix Ready? Who are you, and what do you do over at Citrix Ready?
Hey, Doug, and hello, listeners. I work for Citrix Ready, doing technical marketing for various partner products, validating, promoting them, or creating joint marketing collaterals, and so forth. Perfect.
Tony, I've known you for a long time, but guys out there might not know you. You've been on the show before, though, right? Tony, we had you on years ago, right?
Absolutely, Doug. Definitely great to be back again. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do remember that. So, Tony, who are you and what do you do over at Citrix?
Sure thing. So I work on our Worldwide Alliances team as a principal solution architect. I focus on solutions that we build with our core partners, both for solutions that are on-premise and also now solutions that are in the cloud.
Perfect. And Tony is a very technical guy. So he came out of the old Citrix engineering department. And that's and a little bit later than my day, but right about there. And so Tony's a wealth of knowledge, and I look forward to having you back on, Tony. So Dan,
awesome.
Who are you and what do you do over at Dell?
Hey, Doug. Dan O'Farrell. I'm responsible for the product marketing function within Dell Cloud Client Computing. And the Cloud Client Computing team is the group within Dell that focuses on desktop virtualization. And obviously, we do a lot of work with Citrix and have been doing so for close to the past decade. We were Wyse Technology, acquired about 4 years ago. So that group was absorbed into Dell, and we've got a lot of the Wyse alumni in that group, as well as a bunch of people throughout the company focusing just on VDI.
Great. Did you come from Dell or from Wyse, Dan?
Yeah. I was with Wyse for about a year prior to that acquisition, which was now over 4 years ago.
Yeah. Wyse was always one of my favorite companies. In fact, I used to do a podcast with Jeff McNaught quite often, and I liked him a lot. He would always tell me, I'm the inventor of the thin client. Like, you're cool.
Yes. Yep, and Jeff's my boss. And so he and I have been working for him now for 5 years, and it's great to be able to tap into his wealth of knowledge because he was one of the first people to develop thin and zero clients. And then, our first zero client was one specifically for Citrix that was branded Zenith. And, we've kind of taken it from there.
You got it. You got it. Yeah, no, Jeff is a great guy. I really enjoyed those podcasts with him. That was always fun to do it, do those with him.
Yep.
So that being said, let's talk a bit about Dell. Dell's a big company, obviously. You guys do everything from scanners to printers to VDI. So let's more focus in on Dell, on what your side of the business. But who is Dell and what are you guys trying to accomplish?
Yeah, well, and most people, I think, when they hear the word Dell, there's a word association where they think PCs, desktop PCs and laptops, and that's still obviously a huge part of the business. But what Dell's been doing over the last 5 to 8 years is a lot of acquisitions of leading companies in technology to really focus more on end-to-end solutions for companies. So certainly there's still a big consumer part of the business, but most of the focus now across the company, and then obviously with the impending merger with EMC, is really on offering great end-to-end solutions for organizations. And VDI is just one of those areas that a lot of companies are looking at. And, we just talked about Wyse back in the old days. I mean, that's one of the great advantages of now being part of Dell, because when we were Wyse, we had these killer endpoints. We had great thin clients, great zero clients, but we were endpoint only focused. Yeah. And we worked really closely with the likes of Citrix to kind of help build out that end-to-end solution. But now, as part of Dell, obviously we've got world-class servers, world-class storage, great networking, great software. So all the ingredients now we have at our disposal to create great end-to-end solutions, and we'll be talking a little bit about some of those that are down now in the form of an appliance. So that's kind of the real the nice thing about that marriage, is that with Dell, who's an end-to-end solution company, we now have really, really good end-to-end solutions for VDI working with Citrix.
Yeah, people, I can't stress that enough, how important that is, right? Or you can't stress that enough, how important that is to have that end-to-end solution, because it just gives you, the integration between the layers, right? And when you're talking about third parties doing that, or, especially a handful of them, it just becomes more and more difficult. Not that it's not possible or it can't be great, right? But it becomes more difficult. And when you guys are able to control that entire stack, and that integration between the layers, the outcome tends to be a superior product, right?
Yeah. I mean, the focus is making it easy and simple for our customers, and you said a key word there, which was kind of integration. And in fact, that's what Citrix Ready is all about, right? Which is proof of that integration via verification and validation testing with Citrix and Dell. So just to say that you've got all the parts, I mean, that's not the key. Having all the parts which are world-class unto themselves, and then having them integrated into a cohesive end-to-end solution that is simple for people to implement, easy to plan out, easy to install, and easy to use. I mean, that we believe that's the key, and that's what we can achieve with key partners like Citrix.
You got it. So let's. This is going to be a question for both Dan and Tony. Dell and Citrix is. But what business problems are you trying to solve, and then how are you doing it? So let's take Dan first.
Yeah, so obviously we're focused on client virtualization, or VDI, or virtual desktops. There are multiple phrases that are basically synonymous for this, but the problem we're trying to solve is one of content protection, security, enabling mobility, and allowing people to be productive. And that's where VDI fits really, really well by moving your apps and content into the secure data center, and then allowing people to have their full suite of applications still literally at their fingertips, but having that information protected in a safe place, which is the data center, which, by the way, has disaster recovery and automatic backups, just naturally already built in. And so I think a lot of people understand the value of going virtual with your desktops. And then specifically, what we've been working on with Citrix is to make that process simple and easy, because, historically, one of the impediments towards some companies moving towards virtual desktops has been the perception that it is difficult to do, it's costly, it's expensive, it takes a long time to implement, it's easy to make a mistake and either over-configure and spend too much money or under-configure and have unhappy users. So, what we're really focused on is enabling desktop virtualization and then working with Citrix, making that as simple and as effective as possible.
Perfect. And I want to talk about the Dell Appliance for Wyse and the Citrix integration there, but I'll save that for the next the follow-up question. But before that, I got to get to Tony's answer, right? So, Tony, what what business problems is Citrix trying to solve with Dell's help?
Sure, that's a great question, Doug. So I think what we look at from our customers and the feedback is that they really want an elegant all-up solution. Those customers are adopting desktop virtualization or application delivery with XenApp or XenDesktop, really want something that is literally turnkey, and they want something that you can rack and stack, and it's an easy sort of question and answer format that makes a solution for someone who really isn't a Citrix expert yet, but is really diving down into that platform to make it easier for their day-to-day job. And the last thing someone wants to do is just kind of sit there and wait for things to install, and that's really what we're going to get into later on, is really what this solution does to make it easier for the Citrix guy to give the customers and their endpoint people a great HDX experience, but also an admin experience, so it's easy from end to end, from setup to the time, all the way to the point where you connect.
Well, that's a perfect segue, a perfect segue into the Dell Appliance for Wyse, right? So, can you guys explain what this is?
Sure. So I'll start, and Tony, you're welcome to add color at any point in time. As Tony was saying, a turnkey solution, that's not just kind of a catchphrase. This is where essentially everything you need is packaged in an easy-to-use appliance form factor. So the Dell Appliance for Wyse for Citrix is a 2U rack-mountable form factor. It's also available, if you wish, in kind of a classic, more tower-type version, but the more popular version is the one that you can rack and stack. It's based on a Dell R730 platform, which is a very solid 13G server platform. Essentially, it's got all of the server horsepower, the CPU horsepower, the storage necessary, and any networking, especially as you expand out from the initial package, that you need. So the idea here is not only is it easy to with the very first one, you can configure it for a pilot or a proof of concept. We have two flavors of this. There's kind of the smaller version of this 2U product that is configured ideally for the classic proof of concept or kind of pilot type implementation for, say, 50 to about 150 users. And then we have a larger version of the same thing configured with more horsepower, CPU horsepower, and more storage that can satisfy up to about 300 shared type experiences or about 180 dedicated persistent desktops with XenDesktop. So the idea here is that it's not only packaged very nicely as an appliance, but it includes software in the form of a setup wizard. And this, I think, is the real breakthrough, right? Because basically you take it out of the box, you rack it, you connect it to your network physically through your cables, and then you put in your subnet mask and IP address and get it connected. Then you go into a wizard, and it just basically guides you through the process where it helps you set up your VMs. You basically see how many users you've got. And once you've gone through this, it's basically a 5-step wizard. When you exit that wizard, you have now configured VDI for the number of users that you're targeting. So this, I think, is the real breakthrough. As Tony mentioned, you don't need to be a VDI or HDX guru. Basically, this is designed for somebody who has been setting up Windows desktops as their primary career activity over the last few years. So the fact that it's an appliance, it's a single SKU, so it's not only easy to implement, but it's actually easy to order. So we look at the entire customer journey from ordering to planning to implementation. It's got a nice management interface. and really, this can narrow the time from initial concept to implementation from months or at least weeks to hours, right? So,
very cool, very cool. Tony, anything to add there? I know you have a lot to add there.
Oh, that was perfect, man. He took the words right out of my mouth. So what its simplicity really is, it mentions it's pretty much all there. So when you order that SKU, the server, depending on which one you order, whether it's tower or rack mount, it arrives on site preloaded with Server 2012 R2 Hyper-V enabled. So it's a real simple setup because you unbox it as he says, and as you connect it to your network, the Quick Start tool, which is invented by Wyse and is really one of a kind in terms of delivering simplicity to install our infrastructure and our VMs. It's right there on the desktop. So an admin just has to click on it and just go through and answer a series of questions and answer it. So all the hard work as far as setting up the infrastructure, creating the things that are relative to Microsoft System Center, those are challenging tasks, especially for someone who's not quite an expert in that platform. And the Quick Start tool does all of that hard work automatically for you. So there's a lot of great things you can find for scripting automation, but there's nothing that brings it all together like this tool does, especially when it relates to building what we need for XenApp or XenDesktop. So it does all that great work for you. It does a master image for you. It even allows you to install applications once your golden image is ready. And that's usually the most important thing because nobody logs into Windows just to get Windows. It's about the apps and the data that are inside that, whether it's XenDesktop or XenApp. And so inside that Quick Start tool, you have that console level access to your first golden image that you're going to mass create for your XenApp users or your XenDesktop users. And it's just there. So you go in there and install your apps that you need. And then from there, you're pretty much ready to go and mass provision, whether it's 50, 75, or 100 plus machines that you're going to need for all the servers you're going to build. So the simplicity is there. And, to my knowledge, they're one of the only partners that we have that does this sort of advanced automation to really simplify the whole solution stack from start to finish.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Tony put together a really great video on this, and I'll share it in the show notes that really walks through this setup wizard. And the way that these guys described it, it is just so simple and asks you pretty much everything you need to know and does the rest. I want to continue to peel the layers off the onion of this Quick Start tool because it is so phenomenal. But before I do that, I want to throw it over to Sagnik at Citrix Ready. And, you guys had to verify this solution, right? So can you talk a bit about what that verification process was like? And then, of course, how did this, how did this all perform? Because it's pretty complex stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But the simplicity is hidden. The complexity is hidden in the simplicity is what brings the great value of the solution. And as Tony and Dan mentioned, we have categorized these integrated under our integrated systems category in Citrix Ready Marketplace. And this is called one solution is called the Dell Appliance for Wyse Citrix and Dell XC Web Scale Converged Appliance. And it's exactly as it was mentioned, it's super easy, super intuitive, and super fast to configure and get started. So as part of our verification of integrated systems involved, we test a bunch of users, almost 200 XenDesktop users, booted up and start running, and the whole appliance was working in less than 20 minutes or so. I'm always excited to see what our partnership has next in store for our customers. And also I gave a great I work with the Wyse people, so that involves working with the endpoint solutions that Dell involves in. So I would say it's really the Citrix Dell combo to be like a perfect large sandwich where the top crust, the end users have the Dell thin clients to use upon, and with the middle juicy, tasty filling of Citrix, securely accessing their desktops and apps, and comfortably relying on the back end, which is these integrated systems, being the bottom crust.
I love that. I love that analogy. That's great. That's great, Sagnik. So let's continue to peel the layers off. So I have this great admin tool or a tool, the Quick Start tool, that walks me through the installation. Once it's done, can I still configure things? Is there still configuration required? Where does it leave me and what's next?
Sure, that's a great question, Doug. I can answer that one. So what it does is it takes the two most time-consuming portions of the installation. That's basically the infrastructure we need. Things like getting the SQL Server and, like I said earlier, the System Center Virtual Machine Manager set up and connected to your Hyper-V host. So it does that core basic part because you need those things before you can even get to the point where you have, that golden image ready to deploy. So once that's done and the golden image is done, it's mass produced, you're at that point where the desktop or the application per se is published in this sense for the user. So the user would then basically go to Storefront to log in and access that hosted shared desktop or that XenDesktop session. And you already have them pre-provisioned in terms of the quantity, who they're assigned to. So it's really at a state where it's completely ready to log in. There's more advanced things that the administrator may want to do. They want to change policies, modify printing. Some of the things that are very special and unique to Citrix that we do with XenApp and XenDesktop. So access to our normal consoles through Citrix Studio, still there. Monitoring the environment using Director is still there as well. So there's additional administrative and monitoring tools that are available that the administrator can use at any given time. But the core part of getting the prerequisites done, that's the beauty of what the Quick Start tool does for you.
Perfect. So the Quick Start tool will get me installed, and then from there, I'm off and running with my typical Citrix tools. Correct?
Correct.
Perfect. And it does storefront integration also, and configures all that jazz. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So the beauty about the new release that they came out with earlier this year is it does scale up. So when you want to add more infrastructure, let's say, you build a couple storefront machines, you build a couple controllers, because when you start to think beyond a couple hundred users, you start to want to scale up from a small config to a large config. So multiple R730 servers and whatnot. The Quick Start tool is really intelligent to the point where you can actually automatically expand those amount of storefront machines you may need or controllers. Usually the amount that we do right now is sufficient, but when you think bigger, sometimes you're going to want to add a little bit more. Or you may want to just expand the actual workload or the actual compute footprint, which is basically, hey, I need more XenApp machines or more XenDesktop machines to log into. Even though I have my prerequisites done, that Quick Start tool allows you to just simply plug in how many you need, go through the rest of the wizard, and it will mass produce those on each of the additional servers that you've purchased.
Oh, that's awesome. I was going to ask you about scaling. It was one of the questions I wrote down is, does it scale? How does it scale? But Tony, you're ahead of me. This is why I like you. You're way ahead of me. So, but it does it automatically. And automatically is an interesting word to me because I think of automagically. I don't do anything. But what you're saying is that, I've done my proof of concept. Everything's great. The customer's happy. My bosses are happy. The users are happy. Everyone is, joyful and loving each other. And now I say, okay, let's scale this thing out. Then I go back to the Quick Start. I buy more servers, go back to more appliances, go back to the Quick Start tool, and then say, hey, add these 5 boxes, and away it goes.
Pretty much. I mean, that's the intelligence behind that tool. And it literally is, one of a kind thing that I've, had the pleasure of working with since the first release of it. And it's just gotten easier and faster to use. So it's that simple now with the scale out. It's just going back, hey, where's my Quick Start tool? It's on this master machine I have. And in this new release, previously it was only available as the Quick Start tool was to be run from one particular server. Now that Quick Start tool can be deployed in just about any machine. So it can go through and push that out to various other servers as well. So it's pretty flexible.
Very cool. Now, when it pre-configures it, does it do the basic performance tweaks and things like that, or is any of that required after the fact?
That's a good one. So the performance tweaks are always, up to the administrator because usually out of the box is a pretty sufficient HDX experience. Some people may want to make the skin of Windows a little bit different here, maybe change a little bit of the desktop. Those are common profile things. And that's definitely something that's left up to the administrator because it's hard to say what they're going to want other than the basic look and feel of Windows. So those are definitely more advanced things that are available that the administrator can change, outside the scope of what this tool does.
Very cool. I also saw when I was researching this and going through your awesome videos you made, Tony, which again I will have in the show notes. Guys, you got to see it to believe it. Well, you believe it because we're telling you, but seeing it is really cool too. So, where was I? So you integrate with System Center also. Can you talk maybe a little bit about, how you're integrating with outside products other than just the Dell and the Citrix solutions?
what we're talking about is an end-to-end solution. We've been focusing on the appliance as appropriate, but where System Center can come in is that we also have endpoints, and Sanjeev mentioned this earlier, that are really optimized for a Citrix environment. And we have them in the form of what we call zero clients and thin clients. And our customers have a choice on that as well, right? They can get what we call a Citrix Zero client, which when you power up that device up, it does nothing but talk HDX. And it immediately just attaches to the virtual desktop. What's really nice about those devices is they have what we call zero attack surface, because essentially all they are is a boot up process, a TCP/IP stack, and then HDX. There's no API, there's no user accessible file system on the device itself. So they essentially have, they're malware and virus resistant. We have thin clients that are similar because they have our own what we call Wyse Thin OS software. But some customers like to have Windows on their desktop. They might want to have a Windows embedded thin client. And in that case, we offer those flavors as well. And oftentimes they'll want those to be managed by System Center because they're using System Center to manage all their PCs, right? And no company flash cuts immediately to all thin clients. So in that case, they can have System Center managing all of their endpoints, including thin clients from Dell branded Wyse that are great with Citrix, right? So it's all about choice end to end as a complete solution. And that's where System Center would come into play on the endpoint side.
Perfect. Makes sense. Makes total sense. Dan, I want to talk a bit about your XC series also. And
Sure.
Can you talk a bit about that? And I'll just throw that at you. What is it?
Yeah, sure. That's called the XC Web Scale Appliance. This is a device that also starts out in a 2U form factor. But you initially start out with 3 of these devices because there's redundancy built in, and one of the devices is dedicated to the management function. And this is based on Nutanix software. So we call it the XC Web Scale Appliance powered by Nutanix. It takes advantage of the Prism, Nutanix Prism interface for management. And it also, like the Dell Appliance for Wyse for Citrix, it also provides very easy scalability. Now, why would one look toward the XC appliance as opposed to the Dell Appliance for Citrix? Typically, those who look at the XC appliance are looking to be a scale potentially beyond, say, 5,000 users. So the first appliance we talked about with that Easy Wizard tool will get you up to maybe about 5,000. If you're looking for something that can scale beyond that, maybe you're a larger enterprise, you would look toward the XC appliance, and that can get you into the many thousands, in excess of 10,000 up to, say, 20,000 or more. So that's kind of I don't want to call it higher end, because the elegance and simplicity of the Dell Appliance for Wyse for Citrix is beautiful in its own right, but this will give you more of a enterprise grade, cover all your various user types, scale into the many thousands type of configuration using the Nutanix Prism interface.
Do you, when you're looking at the Dell Appliance for Wyse versus the XC series, would there be any performance differences, or would the user experience be the same, but just depending upon how many users you have? Is when I would start thinking about scaling, right?
Yeah, it's really more the latter, because the Dell Appliance for Wyse for Citrix provides fantastic performance for anybody who we would call, say, a knowledge worker. I dare put myself in that category, but any of us who are accessing your typical suite of Windows apps, PowerPoint, Excel, Word, Outlook, etc., the Appliance for Wyse for Citrix, it gives you great performance. Now the XC appliance can provide a greater scalability, more and more of those users, and it can actually help provide a good user experience maybe for some of your people who are kind of bordering on what we would call the power user, some of the people who might be looking for some more high-end graphics as it's part of their job. Now, we actually have a third appliance that is really for the lunatic fringe workstation class users. I think the biggest difference is more in terms of scalability and number of users as opposed to user experience between these two flavors of appliance.
Okay, Dan. So we've talked about basic knowledge workers, and how everything works for these guys. Do you have anything for power users? 3D graphics, things like that.
Yeah, actually we do, Doug. And in fact, for basic 3D graphics, basic video, up to HD quality, unified communications, the appliances we just talked about are more than sufficient, give you a really good HDX experience. However, let's think about kind of the workstation class user, right? These are the people doing CAD CAM with like Autodesk or Dassault or Siemens type software, the people who are doing designing, doing industrial design, working on next year's next car model for one of the auto manufacturers. These are your high-end workstation class users, and traditionally that was considered a challenge for VDI. Well, not anymore, and in fact, we have another appliance, and that's called the Dell Precision Appliance for Wyse, that can enable even your most lunatic fringe designers, those CAD CAM type engineers, to go virtual with their desktop. You might be wondering, well, why would you do that with like a design engineer, right? Aren't they just kind of attached to their workstation? Well, therein lies the reason, right? Because a lot of organizations want to untether these people so they can be productive and work from anywhere. It also helps with collaborative design, right? Because traditionally there's been this follow the sun design concept where you might have a design group in India, another one in North America, and maybe a design group in Europe. And they would basically work sequentially and do lots of massive file transfers. Now, those teams can collaborate because, again, you've got your design files safely stored in a central data center. And with a decent endpoint, like one of our Wyse branded thin clients, because we've got dual and quad core thin clients that can handle this type of traffic, they can do that type of work collaboratively, even with these high-end type of design CAD CAM type files. So, yeah, we do, and we offer it with Citrix, and that's yet another option. Now, you're not going to get the hundreds of users type density because you are allocating more dedicated server horsepower and storage to these folks. But I believe the current model can satisfy up to 16 users on a single 2U form factor. So yeah, we can cover all the bases, even for your most demanding, high-end graphics users.
That's excellent. Can you mix and match those? So can I have a little bit of the guys running on the Dell appliance for Citrix and then my 3D, the guys the power users running on the newer solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, companies can buy all three flavors of these. Normally what will happen is you'll start with your appliance for Wyse for Citrix and you'll scale out from there. And typically the high-end designers are working in a specific kind of a work group, and that would be sequestered off, and they would then be using for their design apps, they would be using the Precision appliance. But if some of them are also running a suite of basic Office apps, they could also be users on one of the other appliances as well. So in that way, you can mix and match. Yep.
Makes total sense. So I want to talk a bit about Citrix Ready and the views on the partnership. And Dan, you had mentioned earlier, it's just wonderful to work with these guys because it does give you that, that integration between the companies. Can you add on to that? Anything else you'd like to talk about with the, the benefits of the relationship with Citrix that you guys have?
Yeah, well, I mean, for example, our relationship with Citrix goes back to close to a decade, and they helped us. Citrix helped us develop our first of what we call zero clients. In fact, our zero clients for Citrix can be managed from the XenDesktop management console. So we actually worked with Citrix, and we continue to work with Citrix today because our zero client and our ThinOS-based thin clients, those are unique operating systems, right? That's basically just a firmware base. So when the latest version of the Citrix receiver comes out, we have already worked with Citrix to make sure that we can support it on day one, right? So we don't have to suffer from the typical lag that you would normally have between a general purpose operating system, which has an army of developers who can very quickly convert software, any new software application onto that platform. The fact that we work so closely with Citrix allows us to bring the latest features to our customers, even on the Zero client or on the ThinOS-based Thin client. So it's more than just a stamp of approval. In many cases, it's actually working very closely, both teams' engineers working side by side on the products.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. Sagnik, anything to add there?
Yeah, I completely second Dan. And Dell and Citrix Ready bring together customers a vast number of choices when they are looking into data center modernization or advancing their ability to securely remote access desktops, their data apps, and applications. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be exaggerating in telling that every organization who realized the value of having a mobile workspace for their users and administrators have already using or aware of what Citrix Dell combination provides. And customers use Citrix Ready Marketplace to check our latest and various software and hardware solution integrations that are compatible with Citrix products. And like Dan rightly said, you'll find, Dell in every hardware product type in the marketplace. But yeah, it's always up to date with the latest releases and so on. It's great.
Okay, that's great. So maybe can you describe a bit about the typical Citrix Dell customer that would be interested in a solution or that is using a solution like this currently?
Sure, Doug. Yeah, and it would be what I would call the usual suspects for VDI. In other words, these are companies that are looking to be more secure, to protect their content. These are organizations that want to enable mobility. They're looking to allow their people to be effective but critical IP. So where we have a lot of common customers is in the areas of healthcare, because if you think about healthcare, you've got HIPAA and other mandates that they must comply with to protect patient information. Retail's another one. You've got PCI, the Payment Card Information Act, that has to be enforced there. You've got education, schools, you've got banking and finance and government. Those are kind of the big five. We're also seeing customers basically in general manufacturing and industry. We've got a lot of joint customers in the area of exploration and energy. You think about almost any company that's got critical IP and cannot afford to lose that content. And oftentimes, by the way, this is done by accident, not through any malicious act. There was that well-chronicled story about that New York banker who left his laptop in the back of a taxi a few years ago, and that laptop, the hard disk on that got compromised. If that were a mobile thin client running HDX to Citrix, that would not have happened, right? So in areas where, content protection is paramount, and enabling mobility, because once you've got that receiver sitting on any endpoint of choice, you can now get to your target apps content. Those are the types of companies. But yeah, lots of schools, lots of healthcare organizations, lots of government, finance, et cetera.
Perfect. Tony, anything to add there?
No, I think I pretty much have exactly what he said. We're seeing the same set of customers that are looking really for the all-up stack. And what really drives them towards this that makes it very unique is the simplicity of it. So they really are looking to save time, and that's the most important thing. I think people would rather, click a couple of buttons and answer some questions, go out, have lunch, play a couple of rounds of golf, come back, and then know that everything's ready to go. And that's really what we're finding that customers are really liking as they're looking into this, integration between Dell and Citrix.
I want to go out and play a couple rounds of golf and then come back and have my work done for me. That is exactly what I want, Tony. That would be utopia for me right there. So I played golf since I was 4 years old, right?
Yeah, I know you're really, really good at it.
No. When I was younger, golf is a game of practice. That was a long time ago. Nowadays, I'm really, really, really bad. But I love the game. It's the greatest game ever. So so that said, can I get out of, this is still the product's pretty mature and it's been around for a while, but there's always places to go with it. Can I maybe bug you guys or beg you guys or just, poke you a bit? Anything coming in the future you can talk about? Where are you going with this product in general? Things like that.
I think with both of these appliances, what's really great about both of them is that once we've made it easy for you to stand these up, right, to do what in hours, what used to take weeks or months to do, now you're benefiting from everything that comes with XenApp and XenDesktop. So as that platform gets even more robust, more feature rich, that gets inherited on these easy to use, easy to implement platforms. So from a hardware perspective, we'll continue to follow the trail of Dell servers and storage, right? So that implies greater horsepower, greater storage density. That implies more users on the form factor. And we'll continue to tweak the wizard and do whatever it takes to make it even easier to order, implement, install, and operate over time. But I think that's what you'd expect a little bit in the future. More density, probably a little bit, more users, and then also just taking advantages of the advances in XenDesktop and XenApp.
You bet. I guess the tool itself, the Quick Start tool, that's complete. It installs. It does exactly what you don't need to enhance it at all, unless, of course, maybe change it or adapt it as XenDesktop or XenApp changes. And that's a good point, too, and you guys have mentioned this, but this is also for XenApp, too, not just XenDesktop, correct?
Correct.
Perfect.
Yep.
I'm a XenApp fan. XenApp.
Yeah, what do you see? That's where I see it going. In terms of, I think it just follows the trail of innovation that Dell's doing on the server and storage side, and that you guys are doing with on the hypervisor and broker side.
Absolutely. Okay, guys, I'm basically out of questions. I can go on for hours, talking about this stuff, and this is really neat. I really love what you guys have put together, and for the guys out there listening, definitely check out the show notes because I have some neat links in there too. Like I'd mentioned, the video that walks you right through it, which is really interesting to see. And hey, I have to throw it at you. If somebody wants to learn more besides what I'm throwing in my show notes, where do they go? What do they need to do?
So I'll start real quick. So Dan here. All you have to remember is Dell.com/Wyse, and then you can basically find all these end-to-end Citrix-based solutions. And the other thing I would add is don't forget the endpoint. Don't forget that thin or zero client, because we offer a lot of Citrix-ready certified endpoints, and that's really the last piece of the puzzle, right? And we talk a lot about end-to-end. But our Citrix Zero clients, our ThinOS and Windows and Linux thin clients have all been thoroughly and rigorously tested and are Citrix ready themselves. So what you get here is not only a Citrix ready appliance on the back end, but Citrix ready endpoints. And that sandwich that was discussed earlier, not only do you have the best ingredients in the middle, but you've got the best bread as well, right? So you've got something that is going to be effective and tasty all the way through.
That's awesome. Tony, anything to add?
Well, I'm definitely getting hungry talking about sandwiches. That's what I got to add.
Sagnik?
So, to add...
Oh, no, please. You weren't done. You actually have something to add. Thank you.
No problem. So, to add more on that, definitely you can also go to citrix.com/Dell. We talk about the recipe for this sandwich and various other sandwiches we've created, so you can see all the different solutions that were mentioned earlier by Dan, end-to-end, whether it's thin client, whether it's desktop, whether it's, data center, and of course, a Dell Wyse appliance for Citrix. So we have all those different cloud computing solutions available on our website as well.
Perfect.
Absolutely. And I would just add from the Citrix Ready Marketplace as well, you can play around with these sandwiches. So we have in Marketplace all the Dell Wyse thin clients listed and also the appliances from the data center point of view. So just go ahead and browse through the catalog, and whichever is interesting, you can ask for more information, and that information will directly go to the Dell marketing team for leads.
Perfect. And guys, you've now made me hungry. It is 12:30, so it's lunchtime for us, right? Except Dell, I guess it's Dan. It's you're in probably in. Are you in Central Time Zone?
Actually, I'm out in Santa Clara, California, but at this point, I'm ready for an early lunch.
Yeah, or late breakfast. On that note, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I really love what you guys are doing. This is just phenomenal technology, and as I always like to say, it tears down the hurdles of adoption and those technical hurdles, and allows people to get the product up and running, see if it works for them in the proof of concept, right? And then take that deployment and roll it out to the masses, and not have to deal with the stuff that isn't productive for you, right? Manage users, give them a better experience, but get the product up and running, and then execute. And that's what I love about this technology. So kudos to you guys, to everyone involved for making this, these type of solutions. I really love them, more so than most. I love them. So on that note, guys, I'll go ahead and give you the last word, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Doug.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes another successful episode of DABCC Radio. As always, I want to thank my guests for today, Dan from Dell, and Tony from Citrix, and Sagnik from Citrix Ready. And thanks, guys, so much for taking the time to do this. This is such a cool solution, what Dell has put together, and Citrix is working on them with. And I love the idea of being able to take away and automate away some of the stuff you just don't need to do. And especially for proof of concepts, or for the smaller guys that aren't the experts, or even the experts because they don't need to do this, and they want to get on with their day and do the configuration, right, and do the tuning, and not the installation. Installation should just work. And that's what they've done. They've taken away the headaches, and this is awesome technology. So definitely check out the show notes. I put in some neat links in there. And I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. So on that note, please check out www.dabcc for the latest and greatest end-user computing, cloud, virtualization, storage, security, mobility news. We cover it all, and it's a great place to come and see exactly what's going on within the industry. So we pick up content from about every source out there, and we're growing. And if we don't pick up a piece of content from a source that you guys like, please let me know, and we'll make that relationship and do it. So our goal is to give you a good heads up on what's going on in the world, one-stop shop. And I think we're doing a good job. And the new site, it's a brand new site, built from the ground up. It's really beautiful, easy, and fast. So do the view all articles tab, and you can or link, and you can see a list of all the articles in a checkbox driven way. It's like Amazon, where you say, okay, I want a large T-shirt in blue, and make it from Nike, and from 10 billion T-shirts that they sell, they show you like 10, and you can choose real quick. So you can do the same thing. You can say, show me all the Dell articles related to XenDesktop and Citrix. Boom, you're down to what we just talked about, and the thin clients and everything, zero clients and everything more that Dell does. That's awesome. So on that note, guys, thank you for listening to DABCC Radio. As always, please tell a friend if you like the show. And thank you, but most of important, thanks to each and every one of you for listening to DABCC.
Can you say DABCC?
DABC.
Say it again, DABCC.
DABC.
Can you say it again, DABCC?
DABC.
How about DABCC?
DABC.
DABCC.
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 DABCC.